So I'm glad you brought up all those things that we can do and that we should do, and how we can do them. I think one of the things we need is some political force behind that. And you said, as you said, it's going to come from the bottom up. It's not going to come from the top. We're not going to. We can't sit around and wait for. And, I'm thinking, I get some inspiration uh, from movements like that were centered around just affordability in general. There's no reason why water couldn't and certainly should be incorporated into that. Yeah, water should be incorporated into our political scene as much as all these other issues, and if not more, because it's what keeps us alive. And so I'm inspired a bit by a lot by movements like the one that got very grassroots movement that got uh, uh, Mayor Mondami elected in New York City. Although now that he's elected, how successful will he be? I think a lot of politicians like that, they get in there and then they start try to make the changes through the old fashioned way of trying to wheel and deal with the establishment that they're stuck with there. I'm also even more inspired by what's happened in the city of Seattle in the last 10 years, where grassroots effort there that organized and brought people literally out in the streets to the meetings through a not just wheeling and dealing, but through demands made by a strong public presence, were able to beat the billionaires to create billionaires, including Jeff Bezos, who stood against them, to bring about important reforms, real reforms about regarding housing affordability and taxing billionaires and so on. And it worked. So it can be done. But we have to get past the usual transactional politics that are just corrupted this country in so many ways. The money, and this is a product. These disasters are a product of our for-profit system, and that's where I think we have to get more into that. Profit is driving this. It's not concern for people. It's concern for certain people and their damn profits. And that's what screws us. So we have to fight that. And I will be having a guest on in a couple of weeks who will be talking about that. And I think we need to get water is, even though it's covered a lot more, as you know, than it was before. And a lot of it had to do with the Poseidon Project. We together, those of us at the grassroots level, finally got the mainstream media interested in that too, and that became an important issue. But water is an important issue when it comes to, there's a drought, there's this usual superficial and some good stories and all that, but it's not infused like, you don't see Bernie Sanders going around the country making speeches about water. He's making speeches about, other good things. But so anyways, I think you understand what I'm saying here. So
Yeah, I would say it often used to feel like it was the same 100 people in the room talking to each other about water. Right. And you could, water agencies, you and I went to MODOC dinners. They actually gave us press pass. You wrote about it, but those were kind of a pay to play position where you could talk to the regulators and the wholesalers amongst yourselves. I think that there needs to be, in those terms, a revolution in terms of water not being us and them. It's got to be everyone.
Right.
It's got to be the Owens Valley Indian Water Commission, which is formed with the 5 tribes that were so greatly impacted and left with terrible air quality because of the stealing of their water and their land. It's got to be with these community groups that are doing a great job. I lost a good friend of mine recently, Melanie Winter, who did work along the LA River from a neighborhood basis and looking at the headwaters and a different approach on how we do water that involves more and more people. I didn't realize how many people she had impacted until we had 2 memorials in honor of her in a former railroad switching yard that became a river park called Rio de Los Angeles. And there have There have been many positive things that have happened. There have been many great people. Another one, a group, one of the 4 groups that I uh, help and co-chair and run was called the Environmental Water Caucus, made of statewide groups. The guy who ran it, David Nesmith, passed last year. So we're he was a giant, uh, a river runner, like many people in Northern California who saw the impacts on rivers and the negative impacts of damming rivers and got involved in a policy level for the rest of his life. So, it takes that kind of dedication. So I'm looking forward when I love it when I go into a room of water people and I don't know most of them. Like the other day, an environmental justice thing in South LA, a group called Scope with the Better World Group. Um, I love it when there isn't just gray hair or lack of hair like mine. There's dark hair and people with another generation, because these are legacy issues, and we have to get involved in these things forever. You have to weigh in and stay in, because yeah, democracy is a wonderful concept in water, but we're not seeing it, and we need to see more of it. And I think we will, because I think it's the only solution that actually works, and the rest of it is wasting money and time, essentially while Rome burns or while we all bake and we have these extremes. Fires have a huge impact on water supply in the headwaters in Northern California. But we really have to adapt to what we have here in Southern California. And we have the potential to capture so much more water and reuse it while still returning water to the environment and having some remnant of what was once a beautiful uh, area with a cornucopia of species that lived together in some sort of harmony. We have to change that, and it can't be an endless water war that we are fighting in. Wars never end, and wars don't solve anything, they only make it worse. So I want to see an end to the water wars. I want to see solutions. I want to see a new generation who are actually educated in these issues. When I went to college and university, just the beginning of environmental programs, and there's still not enough water education programs for people to understand the issue. People need to know where their water comes from and where it goes, and they need to know what the solutions are. And people deserve to. So don't I always say don't underestimate people's ability to go backwards, which we've found a lot on these issues, especially recently.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, I don't think we should underestimate people's ability to work together and move forward.